It is a Tuesday evening in July. You are standing at the kitchen counter sorting the mail, and you pull out the water and sewer bill. You already know it is going to sting. You open it anyway, and there it is. Another month north of $60, $70, $80, depending on where you live, and a good share of that is going to one fixture, the toilet. Not because it is broken, not because it is leaking, at least not that you know of, but because every time somebody in your house touches the handle, 3.5, maybe 5 gallons of clean water drop into the bowl, do their job in about 2 seconds, and vanish into the sewer line. That water was in your house for less time than it takes to say the word flush, and you just paid for every gallon of it. Now, the standard advice is simple enough. Replace the toilet. Go to the home center, pick out a new low-flow model, write a check for $200, $300, maybe $400, and pay somebody to pull the old one and bolt the new one down. And maybe you will do that someday. Maybe that is the right call eventually. But right now, the toilet works. The porcelain is fine. The bowl clears. The only problem is that it drinks too much water every single time, and you have been paying that tab without questioning it because nobody ever showed you the cheaper question to ask. There is a way to cut the water the toilet uses on every flush starting tonight for $0. It does not require a plumber. It does not require a new fixture. It requires something you were about to throw in the recycling bin and about 10 minutes of your evening. The old-timers understood the principle, and the only reason it never got passed down to you is that nobody makes a dime teaching a family to use less of something the utility company sells by the gallon. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how to do it, which toilets it works on, which ones to leave alone, and what the honest savings actually look like, in gallons and in dollars, on the legal pad where the numbers do not lie. I want to be straight with you before I go any further. The title of this video says glass jar, and the principle behind it is real. You can reduce how much water your toilet uses every single flush by putting something in that tank that takes up space. That part is honest, but I am not going to stand here and tell you to drop a loose mason jar into your toilet tank and walk away feeling clever, because the best version of this fix is a sealed plastic bottle you already have in your recycling bin or a $2 tank bank from the hardware store. Glass can chip, glass can break, glass can shift and jam your flapper valve, and then instead of saving water, you are wasting it all night long while you sleep. So I kept the title because the idea deserves your attention. But I am giving you the version that actually works and does not create a new problem. Here is what this video is going to do for you. By the time I am finished, you will know exactly which toilets this works on and which ones it does not. You will know how to set it up in about 10 minutes for somewhere between $0 and $2. You will know how much water 1 quart actually saves, the real number, not the internet number. You will know why a brick is a bad idea, why a loose jar is a worse idea, and why the sealed plastic bottle your family already threw away is the right tool for the job. And you will know when to stop fooling with displacement tricks and either fix a leak or replace the toilet outright. That is the whole promise, and I intend to keep every part of it. Now, the modern answer to an old thirsty toilet is always the same. Replace it. Spend $200, $300, maybe $400 on a new fixture. Pay someone to install it. And maybe that is the right call down the road. But underneath that expensive answer, there is an older, plainer habit. Before folks replaced every working thing the moment something newer came along, they learned how to make a serviceable fixture waste less. That is what we are recovering today. Not magic, not a miracle product, just less water sitting in a tank that never needed to be that full in the first place. My name is Hal. I am 74 years old. I am a mechanic and a handyman from Missouri, and I was raised by 2 people who were shaped right down to the bone by the Depression. My mother did not waste water. My father did not waste wire, nails, bacon grease, or a sound appliance. They did not save because it was fashionable. They saved because they remembered what it felt like when there was nothing left to waste. I keep a legal pad by my chair because numbers settle arguments. And on this particular subject, my authority is not that I discovered some trick. It is that my folks taught me to stop paying for more than the job required, and I am not about to sit on that arithmetic any longer. Before I show you what to do, you need to understand why it works, because that is what tells you what to expect and what not to expect. A standard gravity flush toilet is a simple machine. Water sits in the tank above the bowl. When you push the handle, that stored water rushes down into the bowl, starts a siphon action, and carries the waste out through the trap and into the drain. That is the whole event. The key thing to understand is that the tank does not need to be absolutely stuffed full of water every single time. What the toilet needs is enough water falling from enough height with enough speed to clear the bowl reliably. That is the threshold. Anything above that threshold is water you are paying for and flushing for no reason. So here is where the displacement idea comes in. If you put a sealed object in the tank, a filled bottle, a tank bank, whatever it is, that object takes up space. The tank still fills to the same water line, but there is less actual water sitting in there because the bottle is occupying some of that volume. When you flush, the toilet releases a little less water. If you have sized it right, the toilet still clears the bowl just fine. You simply stopped paying for the quarter gallon that was never doing any work. Now, what should you expect? 1 quart of displacement removes about a quarter of a gallon per flush. That is real, but it is not a miracle. If a person flushes about 5.5 times a day, and that is the commonly used average, 1 quart saves roughly 500 gallons a year for one person. For a 2-person household, that is about 1,000 gallons. For a family of 4, you are looking at around 2,000 gallons a year. So the claim about saving thousands of gallons annually is fair for a bigger household or a heavily used bathroom, but it is too generous for a single person with one old toilet. I am not going to inflate it. You deserve the real number. And here is the part a lot of videos leave out. This trick belongs on older gravity toilets, the ones stamped 3.5 gallons per flush, 5 gallons per flush, or more. If your toilet was made before 1994, there is a good chance it falls into that category. But if your toilet is already rated at 1.6 gallons per flush or 1.28, it was engineered to use a small amount. Displacing water in one of those is like putting a restrictor on a garden hose that is already barely running. You will cripple performance and gain almost nothing. And if your toilet uses a pressure assist system, you will know because there is a sealed vessel inside the tank instead of open water. Stay out of it entirely. That is not the right game. If you are the kind of person who wants to understand how your home works so you can stop overpaying for things that do not need to cost what they cost, do me a favor and subscribe to this channel. That is all I am doing here, recovering the plain arithmetic that used to be common knowledge. Hit subscribe so the next one finds you. Now, back to the fix. Here is what you need, what it costs, and exactly how to do it. Your best option, and the one I recommend, is a clean plastic bottle. A quart bottle or a 1-liter bottle, the kind you already have sitting in the recycling. That costs you $0. You will also need a handful of pebbles or a couple inches of sand to weight the bottom so the bottle does not float or drift. If you already have pebbles in the yard or sand in the garage, that is $0 too. Total cost for the best version of this fix, nothing. If you would rather buy something purpose-made, a toilet tank bank is a soft-sided displacement bag designed to hang inside the tank. You can find those at a hardware store or a big box home center for about $2. They work well and they stay put. Now, if you want to use a mason jar, and I know the title brought you here for that, a quart jar from a multi-pack runs about $1.25 to $1.40 each. It will work, but I want to say this plainly. Glass is not my recommendation for the person watching this at home. A sealed plastic bottle does the same job with no breakage risk. If the jar makes good television, fine, but you should be using plastic. What to avoid? No brick. I know you have heard the brick trick. Bricks deteriorate in water. They shed grit and calcium and dite particles that can foul your flapper valve and your fill mechanism. Even older guidance that mentioned bricks usually said to wrap them, and newer conservation advice has moved away from bricks entirely. No loose stones rattling around, no unsealed container that can fill with tank water and defeat the purpose, no giant jug that takes up so much room it starves the flush, and nothing that can touch the flapper, the chain, the float arm, the fill valve, or the refill tube. Step 1. Identify your toilet before you touch the tank. Lift the lid carefully. Porcelain is not forgiving, and look for the stamped gallons per flush number. It is usually molded into the porcelain inside the tank or printed under the lid. If that number is 1.6 or 1.28, put the lid back on and skip this whole project. Your toilet is already doing its job with a small amount of water. If the number is 3.5 or 5 or higher, or if the toilet is old enough that there is no stamp at all, you have a candidate. This single step keeps the entire video honest. Step 2. Build the displacement bottle. Take your clean plastic bottle, put an inch or two of pebbles or sand in the bottom, fill the rest with water, and screw the cap on tight. Shake it. Turn it upside down. Make sure it does not leak. That is your displacement device. It costs nothing. It weighs enough to stay put, and it will not break if it tips over. I know the title says jar. I want you using plastic if you are the one doing it. Step 3. Place it in the tank in the back corner, clear of the mechanism. The standard guidance from conservation agencies is to set it in the lower right or rear corner, as far from the flush valve and float assembly as you can get it. What does clear mean? It means the bottle cannot touch the flapper. It cannot rest against the chain. It cannot lean on the float arm, or nudge the fill valve or block the refill tube. If a tank bank hangs more neatly, use that. The rule is not elegance. The rule is no interference. Step 4. Start with 1 quart only. This is the most important discipline in the whole fix. 1 quart equals 1/4 gallon. That is all you are removing on the first pass. Put the lid back on, flush, and watch. Does the bowl clear? Does the water swirl with enough force to carry waste? Good. Flush it again. Good. Leave it for the day. If performance is solid and your toilet is a true old water hog, you might try a second bottle later. But if you go to 2, you need to make sure there is still at least 3 gallons of operating water in the tank. That is the floor. Go below it and the toilet stops doing its job. Step 5. Test it like a careful person, not like the internet. Flush it at least 10 to 12 times over a day or two under normal household use. Watch for a lazy bowl rinse. Watch for an incomplete carry. Watch for a handle you suddenly have to hold down. If any of those show up, the displacement is too much. Reduce or remove. Here is the line I want you to remember. A water-saving trick that makes you double flush is not a water-saving trick. You just moved the waste from 1 flush to 2 and lost everything you thought you gained. The internet version of this fix treats any object in the tank as automatic savings. It is not. The toilet still has to work. Step 6. Pair this with a leak check, because a leak will bury every gallon you save. While you have the lid off, do this simple test. Drop a few drops of food coloring into the tank water. Do not flush. Wait 10 minutes. If color appears in the bowl without you touching the handle, your flapper is leaking. The EPA says the average household's leaks can waste more than 9,300 gallons a year, and toilets are one of the biggest culprits. Think about that. You could save 2,000 gallons a year with a displacement bottle and lose 9,000 to a silent leak you never noticed. Fix the leak first. Then the bottle means something. Step 7. Know the honest expected savings. Here is the arithmetic, and I am putting it on the pad. 1 quart displaced equals a quarter gallon saved per flush. One person flushing 5.5 times a day saves about 502 gallons per year. 2 people save about 1,004 gallons. A family of 4 saves about 2,008 gallons per year. Those are real numbers. They are not fantasy. Now, what does that mean in dollars? It depends on your local water and sewer rate. If you are paying around $10 per 1,000 gallons, a 4-person household saves about $20 a year. At $15 per 1,000 gallons, it is closer to $30. The quiet truth is this: the gallon savings are better than the dollar savings. This fix is worth doing because it costs you nearly nothing and it starts today. It is not going to make your utility bill disappear. If someone tells you otherwise, they are not doing the math on the legal pad. Now let me tell you where this idea actually comes from, because I think you can handle the honest version. This fix belongs to the same family of careful household thinking that my parents lived by every day. Use what you already own. Tune what you have. Waste less today, and leave the store out of it for as long as you reasonably can. That principle is Depression era to its core. But I'm not going to stand here and tell you that families in 1932 were definitely putting mason jars in toilet tanks. The historical record is shakier than that. Organized concern over toilet water conservation shows up more clearly in mid-century drought responses and then again in the conservation push of the 1970s. One trade source traces the famous brick in the tank story to a drought in Greensboro in 1954. So the honest line is this: the thrift principle is Depression era. The specific tank displacement trick is documented later. We are recovering the arithmetic, not inventing a myth. And I think that is worth more than a good story that falls apart when somebody checks. Once the bottle is in and performing well, the ongoing habit is simple. Once a year, do the food coloring leak test again. Every few months, lift the lid and confirm the bottle is still sitting clear of the mechanism and the cap is still tight. If you hear that toilet refilling on its own between flushes, that intermittent little hiss and trickle, deal with that immediately because that sound is money leaving your house. Fixing simple leaks alone can save about 10% on your water bill, and the leak side of this story is often bigger than the displacement side. Then the longer view. If this bathroom gets heavy daily use and that toilet is truly old, the displacement bottle is a bridge. It is not the forever plan. The EPA says replacing old, inefficient toilets with WaterSense labeled models can cut toilet water use by 20 to 60%, saving nearly 13,000 gallons a year and more than $170 annually for the average family. So here is the prevention rhythm I would follow. Do the free fix tonight, fix leaks this week, and start a coffee can on the shelf for the right replacement when this old beast finally earns its retirement. Let me be honest about scope, because honest scope is what separates a teacher from a salesman. This fix is strong on old gravity toilets that still flush well and use 3.5 to 5 gallons or more per flush. It is mild on average older toilets where 1 quart helps, but 2 is too aggressive. It fails on toilets that are already efficient, already weak, pressure-assisted, or quietly leaking. A 1-person household gets a real but modest gain. A family bathroom with a true old water hog gets into the low thousands of gallons per year. The title's claim is true, but only with the right toilet and the right household size. Expect the real number, not the headline number. when to call a professional. If the tank is cracked, if you have recurring clogs that do not clear with a plunger, if the flush is chronically weak even without any displacement device, if there is water on the floor around the base, if the toilet rocks or wobbles, or if it runs unpredictably even after you have checked the flapper and fill valve. This is a thrift tweak. It is not a cure for broken plumbing. The safety note: no brick in the tank, no loose glass, no loose stones, no object that can strike the porcelain or jam the flapper. If you want the mason jar for your own reasons, that is your home. But I am telling you plainly that glass is not my recommendation when a free plastic bottle does the same job without the breakage risk. Set the tank lid down gently every time, because a porcelain lid and a tile floor do not forgive clumsy hands. And if your toilet uses a pressure assist vessel, that sealed canister inside the tank, leave it alone. That system is not designed for displacement objects. Here is where it all comes together. You have one old thirsty toilet. You have one sealed plastic bottle that cost you nothing, weighted with a handful of pebbles, placed in the back corner of the tank where it touches nothing it should not touch. You tested it honestly. You checked for leaks. And now, every time someone in your house flushes, a quarter gallon that used to go down the drain for no reason stays right where it is. It is not glamorous. Nobody is going to film a commercial about it, but it is real. It started today, and it cost you nothing. The honest math is plain. The fix costs $0 for a salvaged plastic bottle and a few pebbles. If you buy a tank bank instead, that is $2. The water saved is a quarter gallon per flush. At 5.5 flushes per person per day, one person saves about 500 gallons a year. A family of 4 saves about 2,000 gallons a year. At $10 per 1,000 gallons, that family saves about $20 annually. At $15 per 1,000 gallons, it is about $30. The fix pays for itself the first day because it costs nothing to begin with. The bigger value is not the dollar savings. It is the 2,000 gallons of clean water that no longer get wasted doing a job they were never needed for. There is no money in teaching this. Nobody gets paid to show a family how to drop a free bottle in an old toilet tank and save a little water for the next decade. There is a great deal of money in selling new fixtures, selling installation, selling service calls, and letting a small household arithmetic sit forgotten in a generation that stopped writing things down. That is not a conspiracy. Nobody sat in a room and decided to hide the bottle trick. It is a system. The things that cost nothing do not get marketed. The things that cost plenty get marketed constantly. And over time, the free fix just slips out of common knowledge because nobody had a reason to keep it there. You can be the person in your family who puts it back. That is what this has always been about. Not one toilet, not one bottle. It is about whether your home is allowed to quietly overuse things just because nobody stopped to check the arithmetic. A careful home is built out of 100 corrections like this one. None of them look impressive. Every one of them adds up, and when you start stacking them, the water you stopped wasting, the leak you caught before it cost you 9,300 gallons, the flapper you replaced for $4 instead of calling a plumber for $150,000, you end up with a household that runs a little quieter, costs a little less, and depends a little more on the person living in it than on the store down the road. Here is what I want you to do. Tonight, lift the lid on your toilet, find the gallons per flush stamp, and run the food coloring leak test. That takes 5 minutes and costs you 3 drops of food coloring. This week, if it is an old gravity toilet and the tank is sound, add 1 weighted sealed plastic bottle or a $2 tank bank. Test it 10 to 12 times under normal use. Confirm it flushes clean. This month, if you found a leak, replace the flapper or fill valve. A flapper is $3 to $5. That fix matters more than the bottle because a leak can waste multiples of what the bottle will ever save. This season, if the toilet is ancient and you are using it every day, start setting aside for a WaterSense replacement. The displacement bottle bought you time. Use it. Now I have two things I want to hear from you, and I read every single one of these. First, tell me what your toilet is stamped for. 5 gallons, 3.5, 1.6, or something else. That one number tells the whole story about whether this fix belongs in your bathroom. Second, if your father, your mother, your grandmother, or your granddad had a little water-saving trick or a fixture tuning habit that nobody writes down anymore, put it in the comments. These small inherited methods disappear when a family stops naming them out loud. You might be the only person left who remembers. If this helped, subscribe. The next one is the same principle applied to a different problem. Before you buy a new weather strip kit or run the furnace harder this winter, let me show you the old draft checking routine that costs almost nothing and tells you exactly where your heat is leaving. Until then, check the tank, do the math, and stop paying for water. The job never needed. That is how it is still done in any home that remembers.